delighted to have been asked to chair the second session this morning, which is covering the opportunities and challenges for the future of the equestrian sector, a topic that I think is really relevant to everyone here, particularly given the current economic climate. So I'd like to invite Claire Williams, our first speaker, up onto the stage. Claire is Executive Director of the British Equestrian Trade Association. She's well known to many here. For those of you that don't know her, her biog is in the programme and on the website, so you're welcome to go and address that. And Claire will be presenting the initial findings of the most recent Beta National Equestrian Survey. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Beth. Your Royal Highness, my Lord, no longer, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be able to provide you the very initial findings on the first stage of our National Equestrian Survey. BETA's been undertaking this work on a 4 to 5 year cycle since the mid-1990s, enabling us to track trends in riding, horse owning and expenditure in our sector for now over 30 years. This summary pack presents tracking results of Phase 1 of 3. Phase 1 results are based on a national omnibus survey conducted with a representative sample of the GB population. We start the survey by asking for interest in a wide range of areas related to equine activity, as you can see here. We then focus down on a couple of key areas to enable us to extrapolate out the trend data regarding riding, keeping, and general interest in all matters equestrian. Of perhaps greatest interest to us all initially is the level of participation in our sport. Key as this is to determining many of the other statistics that then come up later in the survey. And please note that whilst I refer to riding in many of these slides, I do actually mean riding, driving, vaulting, any activity we undertake with our horses. The estimated proportion of the population that's been riding in the last 12 months shows a very small increase on 2018's figure, up to 4.8%. It continues the long-term, if not gentle, increase from 2014 after the recessional impact of 2010. This means that the estimated number of people that have ridden in the last 12 months is slightly higher at 3.2 million. By comparison, the estimated number of regular riders, and by this we mean those who ride at least once a month or more often, stands at 1.82 million, 57% of all riders, whilst weekly riders stand at 26% of regular riders, a healthy indicator for our sport. The other key piece of data that shapes the rest of the survey, especially when it comes to calculating the value of the equestrian industry, is the number of households owning horses, which then helps us identify the number of equines. The estimated number of private households responsible for the daily upkeep of horses and ponies has fallen slightly to an estimated 1.2% of all GB households. This equates to a total number of 331,000. Based on this, when combined with the average number of horses per household, this yields a similarly small decline in the numbers of horses. Now, I would say that this is a very blunt tool to measure horse numbers and doesn't allow for nuances across the sector, but in the absence of any other more reliable data, we continue to use these figures very much more as trend data than an absolute measure of numbers. So please do not come to me or ask me where the other 61,000 horses are. When combined with the estimated number of horses owned by professionals in the industry, it yields a total estimated equine population of around 726,000. There is no doubt that the drop in numbers is due in part to the demise of riding schools that James Hick will be speaking about after me. Of similar importance to us in understanding the participation landscape is exploring the population that have given up riding, the drivers for doing so, and the reasons for not returning. As riders either give up or take a break, the number of lapsed households also increase. So while we may have gained new riders, we will still have lost others, and it's important to understand the reason why. We now estimate that there are as many as 6 million households that contain at least one lapsed rider. Cost remains the greatest factor for giving up riding across all age groups. It is, though, particularly significant for the 35 to 64 age group, perhaps no surprise there, as it's there where the household costs tend also to be the greatest. Age factors, access and time are also prevalent reasons for giving up riding. Interestingly, though, after the last 2 pandemic years, changes in lifestyle have become a reason given for the first time in the history of the survey. Broad-ranging as financial factors are, though, we have for the first time also broken these down into 3 component groups to try and understand that better. This revealed an increase in the view that riding is too expensive, with the inferred implication that this is compared to other activities or household costs, and also that it has become unaffordable rather than it being purely a matter of cost. Younger ex-riders, so by that we mean 16 to 34, account for nearly 4 in 10 lapsed riders, and those aged 25 to 34 are the single largest group. Encouragingly, however, more than 1 in 2 of our ex-riders are interested in returning to riding in the future. This gives us fertile ground on which to build, as converting lapsed riders does tend to be easier than attracting people totally new to our sport. What is harder to overcome, though, is that the second most common barrier cited to returning to riding after cost is a lack of time over a TARDIS. Key to the future of our sport is the ability to attract both new people as well as encouraging, as I've just said, those lapsed riders to return to the fold. An estimated 14% of households that contain people who've never or not recently ridden have at least one person interested in taking up the reins. Of the top 5 barriers, though, to recruiting these new riders, expense still does remain number 1, albeit at a very slightly lower rate than in the past. For the first time, a lack of time was the next most common reason, showing the degree to which we compete against both other forms of leisure activity, but increasingly busy lifestyles. And now a sneak preview into Phase 2, which has been conducted amongst owners, riders and keepers of horses across the country, and explores equestrian activity, expenditure and buying habits, as well as so much more. This phase has only just been completed at the end of February, and the analysis is currently being done, but we thought it appropriate to share some initial data around the cost of living issue and how it's impacting our population. Of no surprise at all will be that 79% said the current climate will impact the amount of disposable income they have available to spend on their sport. 2 in 3 expect to spend more to care for their equines, a significantly higher proportion than was the case in the previous 3 surveys. Unsurprisingly, just under a third are expecting to spend the same, compared to over half in previous years. 78% of us will be looking to save in spending, but indicative of our concern for our horses' well-being, a very good sign for the public perception of sport, is that the highest level of savings are expected to be made in non-essential items, well, for some of us at least, of rider clothing and horse and rider clothing. 1/5 of us, however, see there being no change expected to the amount spent. Of concern perhaps to the competition sector more than anything else is the expected drop in spending on competition activity expected in the season ahead. So this has been only a very small snapshot of what we have seen to date. Phase 3 will start at the end of this week and delves more into both detail on expenditure by category and brands, as well as asking more about riding habits and competition activity. We expect to have a summary report by May, with all 3 final reports hopefully due by the end of June or early July. My thanks go to British Equestrian and Sport England, our funding partners, and to the many equestrians and those amongst you who take the time to complete our rather lengthy services. My plea would be, when you see Phase 3 come out, please do take part. We need your assistance to create the data that we can produce. Further details will also be available on our website. Thank you very much.
Again, during the panel discussion. So if you do have questions, please either put them on Slido or make a note of them for later. We now move on to our second presentation from James Hick, who's the Executive Officer of the British Horse Society. James is going to be presenting Riding is at Risk and addressing the sustainability of our UK riding schools. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Beth. And good morning, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely great to be here today. And thank you, Claire, for your very insightful presentation. The beta survey is a vital health check for the equestrian sector. With 90% of people starting their riding journey as a passion, a sport, a career, I think we can all recognise that UK riding schools are the lifeblood of equestrian participation. With that in mind, and as we look ahead for the next 4 years to 2026, should we be concerned that riding is at risk? The British Horse Society undertook some research in both 2018 and 2022 to better understand how recreational riding landscape has changed. We asked all 361 local authorities in Great Britain with near 100% response rate to share the number of animal activity licences registered in year that involved horses. And that included the use of ridden horses, what we would all recognise as a traditional riding school or a trekking centre, or the use of non-ridden horses, the growing area of pony parties and equine-assisted learning, for example. Sadly, we've seen a 15% reduction in riding schools. That's 250 less than we had in 2018, leaving us with just 1,497 riding schools in Great Britain. And if you think about that, what that means for budding equestrians and for the industry, that's approximately a loss of more than 1.5 million riding lessons a year. That's 1.5 million opportunities lost for children and adults to build a love of horses and experience the benefits of riding. I think we would all agree that that rapid and extreme decline is very, very concerning. However, there is a positive side to this story. Demand to attend a riding school has never been stronger, with most centres reporting a waiting list of at least 50 clients or more. So why are riding schools in decline? We're aware that the most common reasons for riding schools closing is that proprietors are retiring, or the equestrian staffing crisis is preventing them from recruiting enough qualified coaches and yard staff to run their centres. Further, we know that at least 75% of all riding schools struggle to attract the staff they need and are not able to run at full capacity and therefore cannot optimise their profitability. The legislation which requires non-ridden activities with horses to be licensed came into force in England in 2018. This encompasses alternatives to riding and includes activities such as pony parties and equestrian assisted learning, as I mentioned before, like our BHS Challenge Awards, where we have our Changing Lives Through Horses programme, where we're supporting thousands of young people who are either excluded from school or cannot participate in conventional education or for other reasons. There are a total of 231 establishments holding a licence for non-ridden horse activities in England, Scotland and Wales. In 2018, there were only 68 holding this form of licence, so an increase of 163 in 4 years. This is a really fascinating and significant change in how access to horses and ponies is being adopted to support alternative activities across the country, the vast majority of which provide young people with their first interaction with horses. Aligned to this, we've seen exponential growth in our BHS Pony Stars and our Junior Challenge Awards. And whilst not all children putting a horn on a unicorn will start a lifelong of horses, for others it will be a start of a passion that we must nurture. The second fastest growing activity is in support of well-being, with equine assisted learning. The BHS will continue to invest strongly in this area in the year ahead. So why is the decline in riding schools so important? Because we know that the horse-human relationship can be transformational for well-being. Because we know that most recreational and professional riders will start their journey as a child in a riding school. Because we know horse care and welfare is reliant on knowledgeable and an experienced workforce. So what action is needed? Our focus must, first and foremost, be in our determination to continue to address the workforce crisis. Concurrently, we must provide practical business support for all riding schools. And that was a great question that was asked to the Minister. I'm very pleased that the lobbying work that all of us and the BHS has been instrumental in is the reduction of the rateable value for equestrian business premises in 2023, which has directly resulted in the reduction of business rate payments for most riding centres. We must continue our work to develop and protect off-road riding to allow riding schools and riders to exercise their horses, and we must continue to remove barriers and make riding accessible for everybody, extending the benefits that we know exist. Lastly and critically, we must come together as an industry to promote the benefits of riding in holistic terms to all our stakeholders, and as we've heard, most importantly, to the non-riding public. Without enough talented employees, centres cannot satisfactorily service their existing customers, let alone take on new clients. Many people who work with horses started as volunteers through their love of riding, but too many are leaving to do other jobs. We must nurture that passion. We must get the message across that equestrianism offers a whole range of fantastic careers. Careers with good structure, diverse people, development potential, and good pay. To this end, last year we launched the BHS Career Transition Fund here at NEF 22, and of course we're going to continue this in 2023. I'm really pleased to report that more than 1,400 people have applied for the training grant, and we have seen an 18% increase in the number of qualified individuals at BHS Stage 2 alone, and we really want more people to apply to our fund. In recent years, as an equestrian industry, we've stood together, shoulder to shoulder in our determination to bounce back from the worst of the pandemic. Now we must show the same determination to support all forms of riding so that our riding schools can thrive in the future. And it was pleasing to hear the Minister say that he will do anything he can. Shortly, we're going to hear from two inspirational riding establishment proprietors. Julia Coles of Pony Magic, an oasis for young children to interact with and learn about horses and ponies, and Jane Holdsworth from Radway Equestrian, who with her partner Keith Richards physically built and opened a new 26 horse riding school during the pandemic. So it's utterly possible, and we're going to hear it today, to open up new centres. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe riding is at risk. It's our collective responsibility to collaborate as an equestrian community to lead the transformation that is underway across riding schools and other equestrian establishments. We must ride by the side of the next generation of equestrians to make sure that they can have access to safe, world-class education, horse care and welfare, and practical riding tuition. And finally, We must raise our collective voice to positively engage the non-equestrian community to build a shared understanding of the wider health and well-being benefits of riding in order to make sure that we are all riding into the next 20 years. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
James, and thank you to both Claire and James for two very thought-provoking presentations. I would now like to invite Jane and Julia up to the stage. So we're really lucky to have both Jane and Julia here today, as they are both running their own riding schools and can give us some information about how they found it. Up on the screen behind you, there's going to be photos showing both their setups. So I'll introduce Jane first. Jane Holdsworth is the joint proprietor of Radway Equestrian, along with her business partner and chief instructor, Keith Richards, who's also here with us today. Radway Equestrian was formed in 2020 by Jane and Keith after an opportunity arose to buy an already established Radway riding school, which they had both worked at previously. And this takeover was done during the height of the COVID pandemic, so it was not without its challenges. So I think she's going to be able to give us some great information and feedback. And 2.5 years on, the BHS approved riding school is still surviving. We also have Julia Coles, who is a proprietor of Pony Magic. And Julia has worked with horses since leaving school, gaining experience in various jobs and taking her BHS exams. She initially worked as a mobile pony party business, and Pony Magic provided rides at country shows, fetes and community events. And this provided many thousands of children with the first experience of riding a pony. In 2017, with her partner Kevin, proprietor of Madwick Carriage Masters, Julia bought her own property in Hampshire and now offers riding and other activities for children aged 2 to 8, along with carriage driving. So again, another diverse riding centre. So I'm going to be asking them a number of questions to get their views, and then we're going to open the questions up to the audience afterwards. So Jane, I'll start with you. How did you find meeting the licence requirements that are now needed for running a riding school? If you could explain to us how you went through that, that would be great.
Okay, so licensing is something that we weren't new to because we've done it previously at the old riding school. The challenge we had was the old riding school was in a different council. So we couldn't just take our old licence and move it with us. We had to reapply from scratch. So jumping through lots of hoops for those of you that know what it's like to apply for a riding school licence. But we did it, and we had a lot of the paperwork and necessary information in place. So really, it wasn't too difficult for us.
Great. Thank you. I know it's something that does put people off starting,
yes,
so it's good to know that, you found it achievable. So Julia, having done it for longer, what tips can you give people for developing a riding school or centre?
Think big, but maybe keep it simple and start small. We were able to take the ponies to lots of different places, into schools, in town centres. So lots of children had the opportunity to meet the ponies. But then there were lots of questions: where can we go riding? Where can we take our 2-year-old child riding in particular? So that's when we introduced the riding sessions. And since we've been able to move to our own premises, that's really taken off. So we just focus on that age group, though, age 2 to 8. So I think maybe being quite a niche thing, we've been able to really focus on that, make it very appealing and attractive to that age group, hopefully. there will be lots of things you perhaps will be confused about. You need to be an expert in business management and lots of different things. But do ask for help. There is lots of help, particularly from the British Horse Society and different areas, financial management, all of those things you may not have had to deal with before if you're a horse person.
Thank you. So Jane, I know one of the things that comes up a lot is finding the right horses for riding schools, which seems to be getting harder and harder. So how did you find the horses to get your setup going?
So again, we bought the business, the established business, and with that we bought it in total. So all the horses came with us. The IT package came with us. We have a fantastic IT package that we use for our booking system, jumps, tack, but the whole shebang. So we bought everything. However, along the way, we have lost a couple of horses and we've had to replace. We're really lucky in that we've been, horses seem to find us, which is really nice. We've been gifted some horses, a couple of ponies along the way. I think people know possibly they want their horse to go somewhere it's going to be in regular routine. They know it's going to regular dental, farrier, worming programme.
Yeah.
So for them to let us have their horse, that seems to be an ideal. So we've done really well. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, they must have good trust in you that you know.
Absolutely.
Look after them
These
well.
are clients that have ridden with us.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent. Julie, do you have anything to add about finding the right ponies for what you do?
It has been quite difficult. I haven't needed to buy one for a long time, but I've recently started looking for another. And owners can be quite unsure about selling to a commercial establishment, a riding school, which is a shame because we hope that we can provide a nice environment for a horse and pony and more experienced and can provide a good home, but that has been an issue.
Yeah.
I would say.
No, we've had that also.
Yeah. So it requires a lot of conversation and understanding from those owners. They're not, and again, it comes back to that people not understanding necessarily what the horses are doing and how they're worked, which kind of harks back to Rowley's presentation. Yeah. So also we know with cost of feed, bedding, suppliers, prices all going up, it's a challenge to manage. So how, Jane, again, we'll start with you, how do you find managing the costs to keep it all viable?
It's a really tricky one. So prices have gone up. However, our horses still get fed the same, still nice big beds, we don't skimp on anything. We haven't put our lesson prices, that's something that we haven't chosen to do that at the moment. It's something we might have to look at, but we do work on, we're working on numbers at the moment, filling the numbers up first, because we do realise that the cost of living at the moment, a lot of our, some of our clients are bringing 2 children a week to their siblings to their lessons, so it's quite an outlay for them. Livery is something, we have a few liveries as well, so that might be something that we look at increasing costs on that. But,
and have you made any changes? To say you haven't changed the bedding or feed. Have you made any other changes to manage the costs, or have you not needed to yet?
We haven't needed to at the moment. Okay. Staffing is staffing. You have to have the people to run the place. But no, at the moment,
Julia, any thoughts from you on your side?
I agree with Jane. I wouldn't want to compromise on standards or welfare. We're finding families still wanting to come and visit us, but perhaps less often. So this year I'd like to almost go back to where we started and take the ponies out on the road a bit more again this year into schools. We've got some events booked and just try and bring more people through again. And that's quite a nice way where a child can have a quick go on a pony and it's quite affordable. We've got an open day coming up. We've had enormous interest in that, actually.
That's great.
Not managed to catch up.
So generating kind of more people coming through the door to help with the manage the costs.
Yes.
Yeah. So last question before we move on to the audience questions to both of you is what advice would you give others who are just starting out on this journey? So again, start with Jane.
Be realistic, I think, and just keep it simple to start with and work on it. We were very clear from the start what we could do and what we couldn't do to start with. I think we wanted this nice, bright, new, shiny riding school. But it is very much a work in progress. It's going to take a number of years before we can be where we want to be. This year, we've got a really fantastic indoor school, which is key to us. We wouldn't be able to run without. It means we can still deliver lessons 365 days. Yeah. It's brilliant. However, this year we will be putting a new outdoor school in as well, which is going to be great. So yeah, keep it simple and realise that it's not all going to happen.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's good advice.
What are your thoughts?
Very much the same, actually. Very good advice there. Yeah, really do need to look at all options for funding, grants that might be available, maintenance of premises, stables, etc. is an ongoing theme. So anyone starting out really needs to look at the true picture, I think.
Yeah.
But if you do have the passion, then you've got to go for it, I think.
A great one to end on.
Why not?
So I'd like to now invite James and Claire back up to the stage for the panel discussion. We're going to be taking our first question from the audience. So if you do have a question for any of the members of the panel, please raise your hand and we will get a microphone over to you. Oh, there's one at the back. And if you are, when you ask your question, if you can please let us know who you are and if your question's to anyone in particular.
Hello, my name is Alice Window from Backmuscle Stables. My question is for James. Hello, James.
Hi there.
Just interested to know, out of that, and correct me, was it 1,000 people that have successfully gained their stage 2 through the transition fund? How many do you know of those are currently working in a riding school environment? Do you know, are they freelancers? Are they working in a riding school? Are they at college?
What was that response about? Peeling spuds.
Thank you.
So what I do know is that 1,400 people have applied to us for our career transition fund, and we're really grateful for those people. And that money has gone back directly into riding schools to coach those individuals, specifically that want to progress through their stage 2 and stage 3 of their BHS qualifications. And we've widened that now this year to be able to support people into their stage 4 and stage 5. So we do have the exact stats, but I don't have them off the top of my head. But our absolute primary focus is to try and increase the number of people that can deliver coaching, stable management or grooms throughout the whole of the UK. And we're going to continue to invest very strongly in that for you, but I can let you know afterwards.
Good. Thank you, James. Our next question is coming from Slido. We've actually had quite a lot of questions in. I'm not sure we'll get through them all, but it's great to see the interest. So I think it's probably a question to both Jane and Julia. One of the questions is, do we feel enough is being done to promote riding from riding schools? And if not, what could be done to help people understand what's available? What are your thoughts?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah. I mean, I do quite a lot to promote my own riding school, but riding as a whole, I'm not sure what we could do there.
So what do you, your own promotion, what sort of things do you do?
Social media, Facebook, website, and going out and meeting people with the ponies.
Yeah. Sure.
That's probably all at the moment. So.
And Jane, how does your promotion work for about
Again,
riding?
social media is massive for us. Yes. That's a
Yes, that seems to be the way.
Yeah.
Do we have another audience question, or I can carry on? Yes, up at the back again.
I'm Chris Hewlett from the British Grooms Association. It was a question for about, we all know how costly horses are and how and to run a business is very, very hard, especially in these tight times. With the increase in the national minimum wage, I was interested to know how the panel of speakers were thinking how that might be sort of brought into your business plan as to how you were going to deal with that.
I'm just thinking, James, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a great point, Chris. As a sector, we have to make sure we're paying correctly, we're employing everybody in the most appropriate way for each yard and business to be able to do that. The increase in the varying differences in the increase in minimum wage has no doubt put pressure on everybody, never mind the equestrian sector. But I think, certainly from all of our researches, equestrian businesses, and both of our guests here who are being hugely understated in what their fantastic achievements that they have been able to deliver for the equestrian community, are employing people appropriately, and those costs have to be passed on, or of course cost savings can be made in other ways of running an organisation. So I think the community, the equestrian community, has taken it on and are really trying to do their very best to deal with it.
Thank you. So just having a look through the Slido questions. So there's a question actually which Claire, you might find interesting. Is there more the industry could be doing regarding technology around riding? So I don't know whether, again, you want to have a think on that one?
I actually saw this question and I absolutely agree. We use ourselves, especially in terms of the use of horses and the availability of horses. We have 3 riding simulators. They are incredibly popular. A lot of RDA centres use them. We use them ourselves. In fact, one's gone up to BHE Scotland recently. It enables people to try riding without the risk, without necessarily the upkeep, and it gives people that initial feel for the movement of a horse. We ran a campaign a good 10 years ago where we took our riding simulators out to shopping malls around the country to give people who might not ordinarily have the opportunity to be near a horse to get on one and experience the size. If we all ride, so we all know how big these things are, but for somebody who's never been near a horse, the size takes them by surprise. And we found that incredibly rewarding, A, and B, it opened people's eyes to riding as a sport that might appeal to them. So I would absolutely agree. I think we could use technology more, both in terms of simulators, but in other ways that technology can monitor.
And I know, Jane and Julie, we were talking earlier about the use of, again, electronic booking systems, again, the use of technology. So what are your thoughts? I know you're saying that has helped.
Yes, I wouldn't be able to run our business without it because, it's a 30 horse yard. We're lessons all day, all evening. Lessons all day, all evening. It just wouldn't be possible. And it keeps a record of horse hours, so I can see horse health care. I can log everything on there. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Julie, any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, we switched to an online booking system as well, actually in the pandemic while we were in lockdown, and that proved a brilliant tool to help manage all the customers that were cancelled and so on. But going onwards, I was terrified at the time, but it's brought many benefits, and I think most families kind of expect an online booking system nowadays. They look for it, and it makes lots of processes much easier.
Thank you. Do we have any more from the audience? Yep. Another one at the back.
Hazel Morley, Chief Executive of the Society of Master Saddlers. This is more of a worrying observation than a question. A statistic which was in the beta survey that 38% of riders are planning to reduce their spending on horse equipment and clothing. And in the current climate of social licence and welfare, it is so vitally important for us to continue to encourage riders to keep their saddles and bridles fitted correctly and comfortable for the horse, so that people don't see horses not going correctly because of their ill-fitting tack. I don't know if anyone has a comment on that.
Do you want to, one of you want to talk about the tack side of things?
All our horses have their own tack. All have own saddle, own bridle. Some horses have 2 saddles, so nothing has to share. regularly checking saddle fitting. It's one of the key things that we are quite,
So I think this is probably more coming from maybe individual riders. So Claire, I don't know, you have any comments?
No, Hazel makes a very good point. I think key though is to continue to encourage people, if they're not going to invest in new saddles, it makes it all the more important to actually have them more regularly checked.
Yeah.
And I think that's the checking that's key. So let's hope that people, instead of buying new, even though my members will all be shouting at me no, that you actually invest in having things checked. I think that's key.
Yeah. And I know as part of the licensing requirements, we are required to actually have a saddle fitter do an annual check on to meet that. So certainly from that side, it's still a regular requirement. Good. Let me just, where are we? There's a question coming for James on Slido.
Oh dear.
How do you gather your data for centres who are not affiliated to the BHS?
Well, as I mentioned, we undertook that subject to access request across all of the 361 local authorities across Great Britain. So we know every location throughout the whole UK that has a riding license. So we're going to be very proactive this year to try and bring in those centres that might not have thought about affiliating with the BHS. We want to encourage everybody to be able to be part of the value that we can offer in support. And Jane mentioned about the business support that we can help share best practice as small businesses that are struggling sometimes to think beyond what are other businesses doing. Then we can absolutely share that best practice in a way that can be very helpful to the sector. So we'll definitely be reaching out to all of those centres.
Okay, thank you. Any more from the audience? Yes. Yeah, a couple more. So do you want to take this one and then we'll come to you, sir, afterwards? Thank you.
Hello, Charlie Lane, and it's for James. Is your part of the equine industry aware of the significant insurance problems coming down the road to meet you with rocketing premiums, decrease in levels of cover, which leave people much more liable, and the problems of actually finding insurance companies to take on the job?
Yes, no, great question. You're right. Certainly from a BHS perspective, I can talk very knowledgeably about what we're able to offer people, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to hold our premium costs down to people over the last 5 years. And that's incredibly important that everybody understands that really and truly everybody should be insured in some respects or another. We are all, I'm sure, aware of the fact that there are only a limited number of underwriters that are willing to take on the risk of riding. But I certainly feel reassured that we are certainly from our perspective, from the BHS proposition that we have, to be able to offer people the cover that we do as being a member of our society, that you're going to be very well covered for the foreseeable future, and we certainly see that in multiple years ahead at this point in time. I can't give you a wider response than that, other than it's clearly a small market.
Thank you. Then I know we had a question.
Hi, it's Ben Mays here. I've been an inspector of riding establishments for some 25 years now. And on average, a local authority would have about 15 licensed establishments. But for every one of those, there must be, my estimate, just being in practice, at least 2, maybe 3 other places where riding lessons are being given and not on people's own horses, so they should be licensed. Should we as an industry be trying to educate and show those risks, the insurance risks and the claim risks? And James, do you have an estimate on the number of unlicensed establishments?
Yeah, you make a fantastic point, and sorry I missed your name, but you make a fantastic point that across the sector as a whole, we really have to make sure that everybody is working within that licence framework. We need to explain to the non-riding community who are interested in riding that there's a great possibility that if you go to an unlicensed riding school or other premises, if I call it that, then you won't be insured, you won't have the cover, you won't have a professional coach, you won't have somebody who's qualified to level 2 or level 3 that's able to give you the appropriate horse care. So I do think we have a very big responsibility to continue to make sure that we do press home the importance of going to a licensed riding school, and if anybody is thinking about taking up riding, then that should be one of the first checks that they really do undertake, and I guess that's very important. So, sorry, it's Ben, isn't it? Thank you, Ben, for the question. Very important point.
Thank you. I think we may have time for one more question if anyone has anything in the audience. Yes, there in the middle.
Thank you. Miles Williamson-Noble. I'm an honorary fellow. In my time in the past, I've managed a number of service saddle clubs where we used a lot of working liveries. With the pressures on horse owners at the moment, on both time and cost, quite a lot might be looking to put their horses or ponies out to riding schools as working liveries. Do either of the proprietors use working liveries? And if so, how do you manage the competition between the owner who only wants Grand Prix dressage riders on their animal and the beginner who really wants to start out riding an expensive animal?
To my business because I own all the ponies, but possibly more to Jane.
We do have working liveries at the riding school, and it's made very clear at the onset of the partnership when we take the working livery on that there will be a balance between how often the rider gets to ride it and it's working on the riding school, and also they can't really have a say in who rides their horse, but also we're very mindful of who we would put on a suitable horse. Rider and horse suitability is quite important for us.
Great. Thank you. Great. We'll take last question from Slido, which again, I'll start with both of you. The person saying riding schools are key to introducing new people to riding, which we found out. But for those riders who then show an interest in progressing or have a talent to progress, what do you feel are the pathways for moving them forwards, and how do you signpost them on to help develop their careers?
So we offer training and exams with the BHS. Keith, my business partner, can do the training there. So that's great. We've just put some of our teenagers through their BHS Stage 1, which is fantastic. And then they've shown a keen interest to move on to their Stage 2 as well. Yeah. So, yes, it's very much part of our development as a riding school to offer that training. Yeah.
And Julia, with you starting with the really young riders and the ponies, again, how do they progress on as they move on from you?
Well, it's difficult for us because I've got one slightly bigger pony. So we do have a few children that have stayed with us for a number of years and they've continued riding lessons with him, but he can obviously only do so many sessions a week. So I'm happy to recommend another local approved centre. This year, I'd like to do a few other things with my partner. He does carriage driving. We'd perhaps like to introduce that to people. I don't think there's too many opportunities to have a go at carriage driving in our area. Yeah. So there are other ideas I think we can use to keep that interest going.
And again, it comes back to the team idea that, again, if, as you said, if it might be your centre doesn't have the right animals, that it's recommending other centres and helping people progress through that and working together as an industry. Absolutely. Yeah. James, do you have anything to add to that from the BHS point of view of the career progression?
Well, I think this is exactly the point that we're on, isn't it? To try and bring as many young people into riding as possible, to promote the great things that we've heard from today, and get that hook. So if we would obviously all encourage people to go to a riding school where there's a recognised coaching framework to be able to do that, to give individuals a pathway, to give them that love of riding that they're going to take with the rest of their lives. And there are obviously our own, but there are others available, if I may say so as well, that also do a great job out there too.
Thank you all of you for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us. As we've heard, it is a very challenging time for riding schools and the industry at the moment, but it's great to hear that there are some positive stories out there and there are still opportunities. So thank you all, and we will move on to the next session. Thank you.